Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Poisoner's Almanac podcast. I am your co-host, Adam.
What is up, my guy? I'm Rebecca.
How you been?
There's a lot of fireworks last night.
Weren't there?
Yeah, here in America, we had the 4th of July, Independence Day. I guarantee you, most people that buy them $200 boxes of fireworks have no idea anything about the Revolutionary War or the Founding Fathers or any of that stuff. But they're still going to celebrate it with loud boomsticks and explosives that will probably land quite a few of them in the ER with missing fingers and such.
Yes. The night of July 4th is a busy time in the emergency departments across the United States.
Well, people are mixing alcohol with explosives.
100%.
And then letting their kids do it too.
That's right.
Because they've drunk all the booze by then and they're like, yeah, come here, son. Fun bottle rocket for me.
Limbs will be missed.
Hey, don't do that.
I am very sore, especially in my legs, because my parents rented 2 inflatable water slides for everyone and all the kids to enjoy. And it was a lot of fun. And every time I slid on that slide, I was running full speed, like getting a full head of steam before I landed on the slide.
And now your body is like, we are 41.
We are 41. And then after that, later, once upon a time, I was a baseball player. And we got a nephew who's also a ball player. Every time we're over there together, we grab a couple of gloves and a baseball and we throw. And just between those two things, I'm quite sore.
I hid.
You did. You did.
There's a lot of people, so I kind of hid. And
as you do.
Yeah, I brought some books with me, though. Did some research.
That's right.
It was interesting. It was very interesting. I didn't want to stop, so I brought the books with me and made sure my kid was good. Had a reaction to the heat. Had to come in.
I have never seen that from you.
It happens.
I did not
sometimes.
know. Yeah, it looked like Becca's legs looked like they had a rash.
They get flushy.
Yeah, and it really was.
My neck gets flushed too.
Right. It was really just your skin getting flushed because of all the sensory input.
That and I mean the heat, it can be triggered by anything. It goes away eventually. Sometimes, it's just my body gets a little dramatic. It's like, no, this is not the way.
That's right. All right, let's get some comments. Spotify. Sasha says, this is just a bit of practical feedback here. There's a little bit of an echo and a difference in how loud each of you are. It's not much, but I think I can hear it, or it adds up over time. This is for the Dyatlov Pass episode, which Rebecca spent 7 hours.
Yeah, we were still figuring out what the heck was going on.
Yeah.
And now we've figured it out.
We have.
So we have a whole system set up in a different way. So that is hopefully not recreated. But that was not fun for me either. I was so disappointed because I was like, we did a test run and it seemed fine. And then after the episode, it was like, psych.
So we had to re-record it.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, no, we re-recorded because it didn't work when I was out of town. We re-recorded because when I was out of town, I was in a really shoddy area when it comes to internet.
Yeah, the internet connection was rough.
And so it
was ruined.
It was just it was bad. And so we re-recorded and we thought we had it. And then it was there was some echo, not as bad as the first time we were in here, but still really obnoxious. So so I went back in and had to delete certain, because it would show up in the echo. It would be like you were saying it at the same time I was saying it because your mic would be picking it up. Right. So I had to go back and remember who said what and delete parts that you didn't say versus what I didn't say. It was tedious.
You manually edited a 2-hour podcast is basically what it comes down to.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Jay says, I also love Squishables. I just adopted a giant Mothman and one of their cinnamon bunnies.
Aw.
They're so soft and sensory friendly.
They now have a giant plague doctor.
Plague doctor?
He's expensive, but he's cute.
Don't you have the smaller one?
Yeah, I get the minis because they're kind of expensive.
So great.
But they do have sales from time to time.
Yeah.
So
Veronica says, aliens. LOL. Great episode. Great comment.
Aliens.
Aliens. And over on the YouTube channel, this was part 2. This is from the Prions part 2. Prions part 2, excuse me. Prions part 2 episode. Betty Freddy 8377 says, OMG, I became so freaked out about Mad Cow. I was in Europe 1989, 1990 when that outbreak happened. Scary stuff, Betty Freddy.
It's pretty rough.
Yep.
I think I mentioned Mad Cow to you yesterday, just in a whisper.
You did.
Someone had made burgers medium instead of well done.
Oh dear.
A version like, I was like, oh, the Kreutzfeldt Jakob burgers.
You did.
I was kidding.
Are you though? All right, that's going to take us to poison in the news. We have mentioned this trial in Australia before, the mushroom lady's trial.
Yeah.
Australian jury enters the 5th day of deliberations in the mushroom murder trial. This was posted on 2 days ago, July 3rd. Yeah. A jury has entered its 5th straight day of deliberations into the triple murder trial of an Australian woman accused of killing her estranged husband's relatives by deliberately serving them poisonous mushrooms for lunch. The jurors who began deliberating Monday are sequestered.
Do you have it up here?
No, I'm not screen sharing.
Okay, no. I was just wondering because I was just going to let you know I couldn't see it. So, but that's fine. That's fine if you don't.
The jurors who began deliberating Monday are sequestered, a rarity in Australia that reflects public and media fervor about the case against Aaron Patterson. I remember this was the case for the O.J. Simpson trial. The jury was sequestered.
That one, yeah.
And I think one person.
That was a crazy trial.
It was. I think one of the jurors literally kind of had a freak out moment when they were on their way to like a group meal or something like that, and they just had to get out of there.
That had just also happened right after, what's his name, California.
Rodney King.
Yeah, with the police and all that.
With the LAPD.
So there was a lot
of
extra stuff around all of that. I think most of us know, he did it.
Wow, yeah.
If he didn't do it, he was involved. He either had somebody, did it. He did it.
Well, what's hysterical is that O.J. Simpson became a convicted felon for a different crime after the fact, which is hysterical.
I mean,
let's see. The jurors will remain secluded until they reach a unanimous decision on the charges of murder and attempted murder. So apparently in this jurisdiction, you have to have unanimity by the jury to convict on these charges.
In my opinion, I think she's guilty, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, there's details.
Only because of what I've heard, not just because I was like, death cap, she's got to be guilty. No, like, because I've heard, like what they found with her search history and like just certain things she did after the fact. But if they do come back with not guilty, then it could be because of like, they just don't have enough to prove, just without a shadow of a doubt or whatever. Because I mean, with her defense is she was foraging.
Yeah, she told the trial she didn't deliberately poison her guests and must have accidentally mixed up store-bought and wild mushrooms, which she had foraged herself without knowing they were death caps.
Why would you do that then?
She also said she ate the mushrooms but didn't get as sick because she threw up soon after the lunch due to an eating disorder.
But does she have history of an eating disorder?
Prosecutors in the case, which has gripped Australia for 2 years, said the accused woman researched, foraged, and served the mushrooms deliberately and lied to investigators to cover her tracks. She accepted that she had disposed of a food dehydrator after the fatal meal and reset her phone multiple times.
Like, obviously, with like eating disorders are very real and very
awful. Of course.
But like, is there evidence of her having this eating disorder beforehand? Did they bring a doctor, a psychiatrist in to evaluate her on that?
The prosecution said Patterson lied about having a dire medical diagnosis to ensure her guests attended the lunch, cooked individual pastries to avoid poisoning herself.
I did wonder why the ex-husband's family was going to see her.
And faked symptoms to make it look as though she fell ill too.
Oh yeah, and then she didn't like let her kids eat it. Like there were all these like different things. Like she knew that certain people shouldn't eat it. And like she had looked up death cap mushrooms at one point, where they were at. And I'm like, you're telling me you didn't know that these were poisonous?
And the way this sounds, it sounds like when you make a beef Wellington pastry, it's kind of like a larger pastry that you cut up and serve. You don't make individual.
Yeah.
It's not like a cupcake situation. So.
And see, I love the idea of mushrooms. I can't eat them. I don't like the texture of them. Anyway, but like I like how they look and the idea of them. But
prosecutors didn't offer a motive, but suggested a deteriorating relationship between the accused and her estranged husband, Simon Patterson, as well as her exasperation with former in-laws. Simon Patterson was invited to the fatal lunch, but didn't go.
Yeah. Maybe he knew it was up.
She will face life in prison if convicted.
Yeah, they're probably trying to figure out, like, do we know? Because if we send her away, we want to be sure. But
you gotta know.
It's
Yep.
Yeah,
it's wild.
We'll see.
It's wild, brah. Story time. I escaped a religious cult 7 years ago. Without going into too much detail here, let me just say it was an extremely difficult journey. My mental health spiraled downhill, and I thankfully had enough presence of mind to seek out a therapist to work through what was going on with me. My therapist helped give me context to all the wild things I had walked away from. He was kind, patient, and guided me through what my new normal might look like. I had never had healthy boundaries in my life. Therapy helped show me that, as a result of being in a cult or a high control group, I had never fully become my own person. It's a shocking thing to learn at the age of 32. I learned how to communicate to the people around me what I was going to do, and more importantly, not do with my time, energy, and resources. BetterHelp is the sponsor of this episode, and they're on a mission to make starting therapy easier. BetterHelp is a platform where therapists and their clients can communicate effectively and get the most out of therapy. There's a journal inside the platform for personal reflection, and there are group sessions on a number of different topics available every day. Starting therapy is easy with BetterHelp. Fill out a questionnaire, and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple of days. One of the best features of BetterHelp is that if the first therapist doesn't feel like the right fit, you can easily switch to another one until you find someone you really connect with. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. If you're struggling and think you'd benefit from a therapy session, go to betterhelp.com/almanac or choose the Poisoner's Almanac during sign up and get 10% off your first month of therapy.
That's
going to take us to housekeeping for the old podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to follow us on whatever platform you're listening on. Thank you in advance for leaving 5-star reviews or liking or subscribing or sharing, depending on where you're watching or listening. Follow us on the socials. We got links in the show notes to follow our personal socials and the dedicated podcast socials. If you're listening on a mobile device, please screenshot and post that to your socials and then tag us in the comments, or tag us. We would love to reshare that and interact with you all. The Patreon's up and running. The link is in the show notes to support the podcast for a single United States dollar per month. Patrons have access to perks, including weekly bonus episodes, the opportunity to leave us a voicemail, and also you get called out by name on the podcast. And those people are as follows: 87 Pins Girl 71, Mara Santiago, Grace Lahan, Genevieve, Nahev Shatreet, Jay Went, Inken Hafner, Kiri Orsek, Tay of Sunshine, Monique, Shane R., Sue Steves, James Mills, Megan Geiler, Liz B., Woolly Wolf NZ, Mama G, Nicole, Richard Miyako, Heather Nolan, Kaylee, Sasha Rubel, Maya Shostak, Maggie's Yarm, Ogre de Viking, Lynn Rocket, Brett Moser, Zaid, Neil Houdini, Nicole Crane, Jefferson Vargas, Carmen Q, Sarah G, Ninja, Estar, Olive Octopus, Betsy Rich, T-Bug, Christine Moljadi, Morgan Brittingham, Blau Frosch, also known as Clara Jurisons, Vix, Anne Maria, Carl Ziegler Jr., Clyde, Jennifer Wilson Richter, Too Fidgety, Wendy G, Elena MK, Caitlin Martin, Pungrammed 101, Minnesota SPT, Tasha, Stuart Slattery, Simone Valdez, Christian Scradergaard, Bonnie, Oma D, Rynel Alara, Kristen Arnold, Aaron Carey, Lynn Simpson, Melissa Emmel, Desiree Davis, Jennifer Ramirez Johnson, Dalek Party, The Warped Witch, Sometimes Jules, Dizzy Dancer, Creative Honor, Yadmit, Supergirl Sway, Rachel, Anya Brandt, Ebby, Leah Marie Matson, Lady Digitalis, Jesse, Shay 10, Julia Franzoni, Sparks, Gloria Eichmann, Thomas Huff, From Strings to Things, Soy Kasumi, Jessica Gasparini, Robert Jr., Caitlin and Ron Mack, Donna Lankanisi, Lauren Smith, Anna G, Serpentine Fire, Melanie the SLP, Stuart Lee, Solstice, Chris Millanak, Mackenzie Kennedy, Libby, and please welcome our two newest Patreon supporters, Hetty and, you're going to love this one, Hantapalooza, which I believe is a reference to hantavirus.
It's on a palooza. Yeah, that's cool.
So thank you all for supporting the podcast. We appreciate it.
And like I tried live streaming for the first time last night.
Yes.
It was really more of an attempt. I
Yes.
ended up being on there for like 2 hours just to kind of, I was working on this little book nook thing.
Show the people.
Yeah, the book nook thing that I was working on. And
yeah, so, that's going to end up in her camera shot when it's fully complete.
But it was probably pretty boring while I was doing it because I had no idea what I was doing. I was just trying to make sure it actually worked on my computer, and I needed to dissociate from the fireworks going on. My poor dog was under the table the whole time, so
she was.
We were just kind of chilling in here.
She was very scared.
Yeah, I started that up, and we'll do more stuff with that in the future with more exciting things.
Sure, that was yeah, that was just a trial run.
Yeah.
And we'll probably take up more of Q&A and stuff like that.
We do have the Discord, and I've gotten I'm getting some good advice with how to handle that. So we've got that going.
You mean the live stream in the Discord?
Well, no, just like I guess we could do that eventually too. I'm not sure how to do that just yet, but
no, you were about to, but it's not possible to do from.
Well, I don't know. From what I was looking at, it was like you can do voice
chat
stuff, but I'm not sure if it does. I'm not sure yet if it does the other stuff. I'll figure it out.
Yeah,
I'm going to be exploring all that too, probably this week because I got some messages that I'm going to look through as well there. But yeah, pretty cool.
Yep. That's going to bring us to, also patrons can leave us a voicemail, and we have a voicemail to listen to, but I'm actually going to have to pull it up because I literally just remembered. So this week's voicemail is from Lynn Simpson. Let's check it out.
Hey guys, this is Lynn Simpson. I love your podcast. Currently binging 2 episodes because I'm behind, and then 3 behind on Patreon, but binging and playing games while the guys are out watching the races. I love your stuff. My kid and I are ADHD, so we both just enjoy you so much. My husband thinks we are obsessed, but hey, I would rather be obsessed about something that is knowledgeable than not, right? Adam, you are hilarious. Rebecca, keeping you. Love you guys. Have a wonderful 4th of July, and bye.
Oh, that was sweet. And same. I too am obsessed with things like this. And so
that was very sweet. Thank you for mentioning how funny I am. I agree. All right, my dear. That's going to take us into today's subject matter, which is.
Well, we need to talk about a family of viruses that are, because it's family. Anyway, that is vile, vicious, and inconceivable. I just really wanted to say that because Princess Bride, so. Anyway, this one's a monster that not only kills, but it does so pretty horribly. This is the family Filoviridae. And such that belong to it include Marburg virus and Ebola viruses. So yeah, it's gonna be. We're gonna just trigger warning. There's gonna be some descriptive stuff that may be a bit gruesome. Just in terms of like symptoms, what these viruses do. We're gonna be talking about Marburg virus today, and then pick up on Ebola viruses next week because there's just so much to kind of go through, and also there's different Ebola viruses. So like there's different. So it's a lot to go through. And so I want to start with Marburg because it was sort of identified first. Yeah, we're gonna start with Marburg virus. Now it's actually Marburg virus is one of those kind of emerge out of nowhere and change human history kind of viruses. It's a baddie, not in the good way. Is that like a good thing people say now? Yeah, but not in the good way. So, and if you said like COVID, I would answer sort of, only these viruses are actually much deadlier. The main reason it wasn't as good at spreading and lasting so long during outbreaks was because it killed people too quickly to keep up with itself. So if it were ever, yeah, COVID had a 1% fatality rate, and we saw what it did because of how easily it spread and how quickly it spread. It could also spread when you weren't having symptoms, that kind of thing. So it was a quick and easy spreader, which made it deadly. But Marburg virus has an average fatality rate of about 25%, which is much more than COVID.
Definitely.
And it can actually go as high as 80 something percent, depending on, we're going to go over some cases and things like that. So yeah, you may notice that Marburg is the name of a German city. And if I'm saying that wrong, I'm sorry. I know we have some German listeners, so do feel free to correct me. Marburg, I believe that's how it's said around here, but I could be saying the name of the city wrong. But this is because the wider world became aware of the virus after an outbreak there. It originated in Uganda in Africa, infecting and killing those living in rural areas near Mount Elgon and Kittim Cave. This is a landmark that we'll be coming back to later. But on August 8th, 1967, an employee of the Bayering Works factory, this is a factory that produced vaccines from the kidney cells of African green monkeys, became ill. His name was Klaus F. They don't give like full names or whatever.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I think I've seen that a lot with other countries, just for the sake of privacy, I imagine, or, whatnot. And like the book, I've got some books here that I've got a lot of information from. This is The Hot Zone by Richard Preston. He does a lot he lets you know when people are anonymous, or, he just wants to keep their privacy intact. Also Patient Zero. This has a bunch of different viruses, but this one was more, I guess, helpful in our next section. Had a whole area here on Ebola. And then this is an older book. Actually, I picked up from Second and Charles. Killer Germs. There's a section in here on emerging viruses, including Marburg. And
she saw the cover of that book and was like, I need that.
Are you my mommy?
Okay.
Do you know what that's from?
I do. No, I remember the line. What movie is that?
Doctor Who.
Oh, man. Oh.
Everybody lives. Sorry, not in this episode, but sorry. So yeah, Klaus F. He fed the monkeys. He cleaned their cages. After strange and horrifying symptoms, he died 2 weeks later. Another worker, Heinrich P., who killed the monkeys, that was his job. He also became ill. around August 21st. Another, this time a laboratory assistant named Rennet L., I think that's how you say his name, broke a test tube containing infected material from these monkeys, and he fell ill on the 4th of September. These were just a few of the cases that were brewing, and the infected were showing such symptoms as headaches, muscle aches. That was about 7 days after exposure. Then they would show high fevers, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, blood clotting, red or bloodshot eyes, a red rash, also like petechiae kind of rash as well. Hemorrhages resulting in blood oozing from orifices such as the eyes, nose, ears, and mouth, vomiting and defecating blood, and shock. It was a pretty horrifying set of symptoms. Mm-hmm. So many were actually fed intravenously as well because they couldn't eat because of the pain and raw condition of their throats. It kind of just sort of takes off the membranes of the.
Oh, God.
It just, yeah.
Okay.
Just, it's not fun. Now, 31 people in total caught the virus during this outbreak, including 6 people in Frankfurt, Germany. And even with modern, for the time, hospitals, patients were on life support within a few weeks. It was quickly discovered that the death rate of this illness in light of this outbreak was 1 in 4, so about 25%, which is pretty lethal. Now, of the 31 infected, 7 died basically covered in blood at the end. They basically just erupted from the inside out. It feels like it looked, it was pretty awful.
Oh my God.
Now, it was noted during the outbreak, this illness acted a lot like radiation on the human body, damaging all tissue groups, especially the internal organs, skin, and just connective tissues in general. Survivors lost all of their hair, and while recovering, the skin just peeled off their faces, hands, feet, and genitals. And so, it looked like radiation
so the skin
poisoning.
Peels
almost.
off.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it looked a lot like radiation poisoning, and in a way, you could call this illness a poison because it just destroys. Which, I mean, technically, you can call any of them that, but
so this is a virus, right?
It is a virus.
Okay. I'm sure you're going to tell me about the mechanism.
Which, in a way, a lot of viruses do act as parasites, if you think about it. So they need you to be able to replicate. So it actually has a propensity to stay in the eyes and testicles for a while after infection, should you survive.
Brother, what?
Yeah, it can. I'll explain in a moment.
Anything that's like a ball.
It's not exactly why. I will explain why in a moment.
Listen, I know what I'm talking about.
Anyway, yeah.
All right, thanks for listening. That's a good episode.
It can pretty much causes pretty infection in these sites as well. So, pretty significant. I mean, it can rot them out.
Well, I vote no.
The eyes and testicles are immune privileged sites of the body, meaning there is less immune activity going on there. Why is that so funny?
Because I'm 12 years old. It's so funny to talk about just, the testiculos. It's just making me laugh. You're like, you're trying to be so serious. And I'm just like, balls.
I'll just wait. I'll wait for you.
All right, I'm good.
I'm like a teacher, just waiting on her class to stop.
I'm good.
To grow up a little bit. You good?
Uh-huh.
You good?
Uh-huh.
Anyway. Immune privileged sites, meaning there is less immune activity going on there. Have you ever heard that creepy little factoid about
balls?
I'm going to throw you out of this room and do this myself. Who will you talk to? Myself.
And you could do that.
So, but there's this little creepy factoid that if your immune system knew that your eyes were there, it would attack them and make you go blind, basically, because there's a lot of complicated stuff there. But this is kind of what is going on there. This is what's behind that. So you're going to love this too. There is autoimmune orchitis, however, in which the immune system does attack the testicles. Ooh. So don't see you joking about that. Anyway, so obviously this was a cause for panic. especially since no one knew what this was, what was causing it, how it spread, etc. Now, at one point, some thought it could be related to rabies because of how the virus affected the brain. It caused some pretty scary neurological symptoms such as disorientation, confusion, agitation, and coma. Once it was finally isolated and looked at, it almost looked like a stretched out rabies virus particle. The rabies viruses apparently look more bullet shaped. But this family of viruses, the filoviruses, which basically translates to thread viruses in Latin. It's Latin, actually, in Latin. They looked like strands of rope, hair, or worms. And I think I sent you a picture of this virus.
Find that.
I was like, did I do that? I think I did that. Just to kind of help you understand what it looks like. I always like a good visual when it comes to the viruses we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I believe, a color-stained image from an electron microscope.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll notice some of them look straight, some of them look rounded or loop. Anyway, but so they look like some of them look like they're rolled into loops or they're bent. So the shape can vary a bit. Whatever the case, it looked like nothing else that they'd seen. What was known, however, was that it had begun in a localized area at this vaccine factory. And this factory was receiving shipments of these monkeys from Uganda. It was also believed that these monkeys were not the original reservoir for the illness because it killed the monkeys faster and at a higher rate than it did the humans. I mean, it decimated these monkeys. If a virus kills its host that fast, its chances of spreading go down, right? Because it's not.
Yeah, you mentioned this while you were doing
the monkeys
research.
aren't alive enough to really go out and spread it further. This just kills them too fast.
Sure. And I think you also mentioned like geographic locations of human populations that were affected were
more
isolated. Yeah, they were more remote.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that when we get to the outbreaks in Africa as well. Well, I mean, here too, it could have traveled far and wide if one of these people, I don't know, got on a plane and just went everywhere, and that's what usually we worry about when it comes to illnesses and stuff. So,
well, we should worry about it.
Now this doesn't this particular virus. They didn't know it then, but it's not airborne among humans. So we'll get to that in a moment on how it's on transmission and stuff. But yeah, still, there's always a risk, with traveling and such.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was killing these monkeys pretty fast. I mean, it killed the monkeys at a rate close to 100%. Like monkey got it, it was dead soon.
Okay.
Now, as it turned out, when this shipment came in, half of them were already dead from hemorrhaging. Like, it was pretty gruesome. Wow. So with this in mind, teams from the World Health Organization, as well as medical research agencies from Europe and America, went to Uganda and Kenya in search of where this came from to learn more about it, because it's like, okay, this is a serious illness. We've never seen this before. We don't know what this is.
What year was this again?
This was in 1967.
67. Okay.
Yeah.
Careful now. Your bouncing foot shakes your camera.
I know. I got a problem. Maybe I should sit a different way for myself.
I think your foot was against the foot of the desk.
No, much. That's just the floor.
No, you're leaning on the.
Oh.
Yeah. Never mind. It doesn't matter.
I'm just going to do this to keep myself.
Everything hurts and I'm dying
from doing that.
I have Marburg virus.
You better hope you don't.
Just kidding.
I smell chocolate. Maybe I'm just hungry. Anyway, so yeah, they tested a multitude of animals, including monkeys, apes, which are not the same thing. Monkeys and apes are different.
You look mad at me.
No, I'm just mad. I'm mad at
that offense.
No, I'm just mad at things in general. Chimpanzees, by the way, are apes, not monkeys. I don't like either because they're smart and they can be violent, and I don't like them. I mean, I don't want to kill them. I just don't want to be near them. I respect the species and Want them to flourish away from me. Okay, cool. Yeah. Anyway, so they went out there to kind of look for this. Like they said, they were testing all these animals. They also tested mosquitoes, ticks, bats, cats, just trying to figure out where this is coming from. They also searched for the origin of these sick monkeys and how they came to be shipped to Germany. Like, how did this get past?
Certainly.
Inspection or whatever.
Contact tracing.
Now, it was in 1982 that the answer to the latter question was revealed by a sort of witness to the situation. In Richard Preston's The Hot Zone, it's one of the books I showed you earlier, he calls this witness Mr. Jones, but like I said about a lot of Preston's, he keeps people's privacy if he can.
Oh, it was his choice to not reveal last names of those.
Well, no, I think they do. I've seen them do that over in like Europe too. Like when we've done other cases, like they'll have like the first and then just last initial usually.
If it's based in Europe.
But yeah, if I'm looking at victim names and people like who have committed crimes and stuff, I typically see it written as like first name, last initial. I'm not sure.
Is that an alias, or are they withholding the surname?
I think they're just withholding the surname.
Okay.
So
I don't know. If you notice that pattern, I appreciate them doing that because
it's just what I've noticed. I'm not sure if the reason I think is the real reason, like for privacy consideration. Here in America, they're like, this is his name. He on the internet. That's how old he is. That's where he lived.
If you guys haven't seen
all of it out there, they have a jail report. You can just go in there and see what people got arrested for.
That's right.
I went to school with him. He got arrested for what? Where he lived? All that information.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah. For those of you who don't live in the U.S., there's literally a magazine published, and you can pick it up in a gas station called The Jail Report.
Yeah, it's pictures of their mugshots and everything. It's kind of they do it to embarrass them, I'm sure.
Yeah,
as a form of,
and also to sell magazines.
Yeah,
but it's like it's shock value media. It's like a weekly magazine where all the mugshots, which are publicly available, get published in a magazine.
Before long, we'll just go back to public executions, I guess. Anyway, but yeah, he calls this witness Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones wanted his name to be anonymous. It was his choice. But just before the outbreak in Germany, Mr. Jones worked as a sort of inspector at an export facility. This is the location that the monkeys were shipped from. He was in charge of inspecting the monkeys at this point before they were shipped off. And he has said that the monkeys came from this operation run by this rich monkey trader who was like shipping like 13,000 monkeys a year to Europe. A lot of monkeys.
Brother. You're talking about risk.
And he's making big money for it. I mean,
what's the demand for
laboratories and,
okay.
I mean, yep. I'm sure there's other things, but now as the inspector, Mr. Jones simply gave these monkeys like a look over. I mean, it wasn't like he's not like a vet going and looking at all these. He's just looking them over, seeing if they have any sort of lesions or obvious signs
marketable or not.
If they have any obvious signs of sickness, basically, yeah, which like you can be sick and not have obvious signs of sickness. You know what I mean? Like monkeys can do that too. They can be sick, but you wouldn't know it until later. But that's what he was doing. He was just giving them a one look over, and if he found any to be obviously diseased, he would pull them out. Right. Now he had assumed that the sick looking monkeys were being euthanized or killed, but instead he later found out that the rich monkey boss dude was simply shipping them off to this island in Lake Victoria.
The rich monkey boss dude, also known as Donkey Kong. We'll go ahead and skip to the...
Not Donkey Kong. That's like one of the only monkeys I like. That and Curious George. Well, he's not a monkey. He's an ape. Donkey Kong. Donkey. You know what I mean, though. He's the only, like... I'm going to move on. So, yeah, Monkey Boss. He was simply shipping them off to this island in Lake Victoria, where they were being released and recaptured if they were ever short on monkeys. Now, it can be presumed that while on this island, whatever monkeys might actually be infected with something could just pass it around. And so when monkeys were recaptured there and shipped off to Europe, they had a much greater, chance of being diseased, if not beforehand. I mean, so Mr. Jones suspected that some of these Lake Victoria monkeys may have had this Marburg virus and were shipped off to Europe. So, resulting in what happened in Germany soon after they arrived. He did say that teams came asking about the monkeys afterward, but he was told by rich monkey trader dude to not say anything unless directly asked, and he was never directly asked anything. So, yeah, Mr. Jones also explained that he had heard of a similar illness causing outbreaks in the rural areas of Uganda. He had been stationed in Uganda between 1962 and 1965, inspecting cattle at that point, when he heard from local chiefs that people living north of Mount Elgon along the Greek River were suffering and dying of a disease that caused bleeding and a peculiar skin rash. So this could have been going around in those more rural villages and areas that people just weren't hearing much about or doing much about because it's like not our business. We don't go there. So, yeah. It was said the monkeys also died of something similar in the area, as well as those people in those villages. So now it's likely that Marburg was floating around the area of Uganda before it was ever accidentally shipped off to Germany in those monkeys. So it's likely it was already going around there. Now I mentioned a cave earlier alongside Mount Elgon. This is Kittim Cave, and it was and still is actually by some to be where Marburg could have originated from. Not the cave itself, mind you, but what lives in it. So now Kittim Cave is actually part of a national a park of some sort, I believe. I know you can't really read that, but that's like the little thing at the entrance talks about this is a place you will want to explore, come visit, must see. Right?
I can make out a volcanic lava tube.
That's actually been shown. They don't think that's actually what it was
been
anymore.
Debunked?
That's what they thought it was back then, but I've read recently that there's questions regarding that. So
interesting.
But I can tell you what it is for sure.
Okay.
That we do know what it is. So, yeah. Now we don't know for absolute certain that it's these fruit bats.
Yeah, you're getting.
Okay.
Yeah, you're getting existential.
But it is believed that the Rosetta bats, which they think that these are the vectors of, they're the vectors. They're vectors of many diseases.
Okay.
But it's believed that these bats are also the vectors of Marburg. Suspected. Like I feel like they haven't been able to prove that just yet, like all the way, but they're pretty sure like this is where it comes from.
Okay.
Yeah. So this cave, the cave is linked to the origins of Ebola as well, which we're going to go over next week. But they're in the same family. I mean,
this ain't the cave y'all want to go in.
And it's a tourist attraction. So.
Whatever.
So it's been linked.
What if I'm unattracted to it?
Y'all know I don't like going to caves anyway. I recently did a bonus episode on like places you won't find me, and caving is one of those. We talked about the Nutty Putty Cave incident a little bit, and not me, not this one. No, I will not be the problem there because I will not be there. So yeah, like we said, there are links to the origins of Ebola there as well, like the bats, and they live there. Now, Kittim Cave has been called the most dangerous place on Earth by some publications in the past, which I think is honestly a bit sensational and hyperbolic. I mean, considering all the places on Earth that can be dangerous, I mean, I get you're trying to make a point, but still, we're going to discuss it because, spooky cave and diseases, right? So, I mean, I'm not going in it. Now, Kittim Cave is a part of Mount Elgon National Park in Kenya. The inner walls of Kittim Cave are high in salt content, and this actually invites elephants in to carve it up with their tusks so they can eat the salty minerals, and this has actually made the cave larger over time. They've literally carved out this cave to go after the salt.
That is crazy. Wow.
So yeah, they go in there and they get the stuff. Now, unfortunately, there is a deep crevasse in the cave in which younger elephants have stumbled into and died. So that kind of sucks. Other animals like hyenas and buffalo come in to eat, and he left behind salt. There's also a lot of guano, which is bat poop for those of you who have not seen Ace Ventura 2. That's the second one, right? Is it the second one that he looks for the white bat or whatever?
Yes.
And he actually hates bats or something?
Does he
I
really?
love bats. I think they're
I didn't
great.
know that part of the
I mean, I don't,
Ace Ventura lore.
I'm not going to go in a cave and pick one up and be like, besties, because rabies and so many other things, but I do like the creature itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Now, it's earned its deadly reputation based on the stories of those who have gone in and come out dying later of Marburg virus.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only 2 stories of this, mind you, and it's not just this cave that I feel like this has happened in, but we're gonna talk about it. So one such case was of a Frenchman named Charles Monet, who lived in Kenya, where he worked the pump house of this sugar factory / plantation. And he visited the cave with a friend on New Year's Day, January 1st of 1980. They explored a bit. They went deep into the cave. There was like elephant dung and bat guano from both fruit and insect eating bats, as well as bones and fossils of other animals. A lot of critters, go in and out of that cave. So we can't be sure of all that took place there that day. Like if he had cut himself maybe on some sharp rock, or a virus entered in that way, or he simply touched the bat and it later somehow sneaked into his system some way. The virus. I mean,
Yeah.
But they eventually left, and he went back home to the sugar factory. 7 days later, he developed a throbbing headache that only grew worse in the days after. Then his back began to ache as well, pretty bad, and aspirin wasn't doing anything to help his headache or his backache. He had a temporary housekeeper at this point. He had a regular housekeeper, but she wasn't there. I think he was on like a holiday or something. But he had this temporary housekeeper who was unsure of what he was dealing with, but nothing she did helped him at all. And after 3 days of this headache and backache, he became nauseated, developed a fever, started vomiting. He vomited so much and so intensely that he was dry heaving at one point. Like
he emptied his stomach.
His face had become blank. His eyes were drooping and mask-like. His eyes turned red and became somewhat fixed, as if he couldn't look away from something. He became irritable and sullen and angry, and his skin became jaundiced, yellowing of the skin, with red patches or spots just all over him. Now, those he had worked with visited when he just had stopped showing up to work and realized that he needed a hospital. So one of them drove him to the nearest one, and these hospital workers had no idea what was going on with him. But they tried giving him an injection of antibiotics, which did no good. So they sent him in a cab to the airport to fly to Nairobi.
Wow.
Where a better hospital was. We're talking about places too where it's like little hospitals. They don't have much that they're working with.
It's a makeshift.
And sometimes they're just like little mission hospitals. They don't even have a doctor present. Mm-hmm. Right? So, he gets on a plane with this illness where other people are.
Perfect.
Traveling to other places. You can see how bad that is, to be honest, right? At this point, no one knows anything about this illness. He does get ill on the plane, and he vomits into an air sickness bag. By this time, he looks very sick. Those red splotches are becoming dark purple bruises, and his eyes are just blood red at this point. His mouth is also red because he's vomiting blood at this point. He also gets a really bad nosebleed, and it's just nothing is clotting at this point. Now, all of this smells awful, by the way. Hematemesis. Oh my God.
Hematemesis.
My brain hurts. I need food. Hematemesis smells like death, literally. He's literally dying from the inside out. Now, by this point, he would have had clots clogging up most of his organs until the clotting factors hit their limit, and there just aren't anymore. Your body's not making any more because those organs are being destroyed.
Yeah.
Then the hemorrhaging worsens. So the bloody nose is really bad. He finally makes it off the plane. I can't even imagine what the other passengers are thinking watching all of this. Like, He is really sick.
We're all trapped in this giant metal tube.
And like it's a small plane too. They're cramped in there with this guy.
Right. There's no way to escape.
Yeah. So yeah. He gets into a taxi, tells the guy to take him to the hospital. I'm sure the guy doesn't have to be told twice. You can look at this guy. He can barely speak clearly by the time he gets there. He's still bleeding. I'm honestly uncertain of how he's conscious at this point, but
yeah.
Then while waiting to be seen, he just crashes. He vomits more blood. He collapses as blood also comes from the other end. Basically, his insides are literally disintegrating. So he's now on the floor bleeding out. And the crowd that is also waiting to be seen there does their best to just kind of back away, get away from him while calling for help.
Mm-hmm.
So Monet gets wheeled into the ICU, and a Dr. Musoke is there checking his vitals and trying to get an endotracheal tube, an ET tube down him so that he can get his airway clear, stabilize his breathing and all and whatnot. Now it's clear to him that the man is choking on his own blood, In the process, Monet vomits again, the tube likely setting off maybe the gag reflex or whatever else is going on. And this bloody vomit gets all over Dr. Musoke. I hope I'm saying his name right. Also, my computer keeps changing it to Musk. How dare you?
How dare you? First of all, how dare you?
Dr. Musoke does not deserve that. But yeah, it gets all over him, including his face, eyes, and mouth.
I know where this is going.
A nurse was also trying to get an IV in the patient so they could give him blood because he'd lost so much blood.
Yeah.
But whenever she stuck the needle in, blood would just erupt around it. Like they couldn't get an IV in him. It would just, no vein would hold up. So Monet actually ended up dying in the early hours of the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And they did an autopsy. Obviously, because they're unsure of what the heck killed him. And once they opened him up, however, they found his insides a mess. Hot mess. His liver was yellow and just partly liquefied. The lining of his intestines had sloughed off. They were just filled with blood. His kidneys were destroyed, and he had suffered major clotting and hemorrhaging, together.
Major clotting and hemorrhaging.
Yeah, so it's like you start clotting until the clotting factors run out, and you can't make any more. It's just that you're clotting up so that your blood vessels are clotting up. That's what's causing a lot of some of the original symptoms with your organs failing and such. Because you get it up here too, and so you have some neurological symptoms, and so your brain is literally just you got clots and no blood flow going to your brain, and then eventually hemorrhaging. So it wasn't long after Charles Monet's burial that Dr. Musoke became seriously ill with similar symptoms. Now he, however, would survive miraculously.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, during his illness, blood was collected by Dr. David Silverstein.
Yeah.
He's a doctor with this brilliant track record. Actually, you can look him up. He's been a doctor for a lot of royals and famous people. Pretty high up there.
He's in Nairobi?
He's been, at this point he was. But yeah, he's been, he's had a lot of experience. He's a pretty good doctor. So they collected some blood from Dr. Musoke, but they also did a liver biopsy because at this point, I think one doctor suggested gallstones and a liver abscess were considered, because remember, they don't know what this is. They've never seen this before.
But there is jaundice.
Yeah, there's jaundice and there's GI upset, stuff like that. And so, they're like, maybe something's going on with the liver or the areas around it. So let's check that out. Now, during the operation in which the biopsy was done, the surgeons described themselves as being up to their elbows in blood. The blood just wouldn't clot.
Yeah.
And they kept trying to keep him from bleeding. It just, nothing they did worked. So they just did it really quick. And obviously this was surprising and terrifying to the hospital staff. What is happening in his body? Also, his kidneys had begun to fail and no one thought he would live. But results finally came back, and Dr. Silverstein received a call from an American researcher stationed in Kenya stating that why do y'all change his name? Muskoke. This time they changed it to Muskogee.
Muskogee, yeah.
Muskogee.
Muscadine. Marsupial.
Stating that Dr. Muskoke was positive for Marburg virus.
Ah.
Now they only knew what Marburg virus was in this case because of what had happened in Germany just a few years earlier, right? So this is totally new. Yeah. So Charles Monet had gone into Kidham Cave, and 7 days later he was ill. In 1987, a young Danish boy, he was about 10 years old, and he's actually given the name Peter Cardinal in Preston's The Hot Zone book, but that's a pseudonym. It's not his real name.
Gotcha.
But this boy's parents lived in Kenya. They worked for a Danish relief organization, and he actually visited the cave, and then later came down with a hemorrhagic virus, later identified as Marburg, and then realized to be a different subtype of Marburg, like a different strain, I suppose you could call it.
Okay.
That was then named Raven, apparently after the actual kid who was infected. I guess that might have been his last name or something in reality.
Yeah.
He was in the hospital with similar symptoms of headache, malaise, vomiting, bleeding out. It was bad. He died 11 days after he started showing symptoms. So it was these two specific incidences that have made Kidham Cave a famously dangerous place. However, it's technically likely what resides inside. That is the reservoir of this illness, and they just, were exposed to it when they went in. Now, a team went in search of the virus in this cave in spring of 1988. Their only way of finding anything at that point was to bring animals there while in their little space suits, not the animals, the people, because they're in protective gear. They don't want to get it, right? If it is, in there. And so they were bringing animals to see if the animals got sick, essentially. And if so, the plan was to then isolate the virus from the sick animals. They did this and nothing happened. No animals got sick and they found nothing.
Thanks a lot, Marburg virus.
Either way, I'm not going in. No, thank you. I don't like caves anyway. I'm just not doing it. So
how does a virus biologically survive in a cave, with no host, or what's going on?
It's what's living in the cave, though, the bats, right?
I forgot about the bats. Okay.
Yeah. Well, they assume it's the bats.
Okay. Yeah, there's got to be a host.
But
it's virology.
But what they've discovered is bats that carry this virus don't
become ill.
Yeah, they don't become ill. They don't show symptoms. They're just carriers of it.
And we've talked about this before, in the same way that filter feeding shellfish or actual fish can retain an illness in their flesh but not become ill. Yeah.
So yeah, and it gets even weirder with Ebola. I'm gonna let you know that now.
All right.
So between its first identification in 1967, Marburg virus has been having a time here and there. There have been some smaller outbreaks, as in Charles Monet's and Dr. Muskoke's, and then of course, and then the later Danish boy's case. But since there have been multiple outbreaks in general, I just want to go over some that I found significant for different reasons. One singular one I do want to mention is of a Russian lab worker who was accidentally infected via contamination in said lab in 1990. This patient died, and I feel like this is a good example of why even professionals working with the virus can be very dangerous. Accidents happen. The virus is considered, as we know it now, is considered to be a biosafety level 4 pathogen.
Is that the max level there?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That number only goes up to 4. Gotcha. So it requires...
like an F5 tornado.
In the body? It requires... There's only 2 places, actually, that, at least in America, that I know of, that study these level of pathogens, and that's the CDC in Atlanta.
Well, we used to study them.
I don't know what's going on now, but also there's a lab in Fort Detrick, but we'll talk more about that one too once we get to Ebola. But yeah, those are 2 places where it is that you have to wear, I call them space suits, but it's the like hazmat looking suits. You got the hood and the gloves over gloves over gloves as you know, and you go through this sort of gray area or this basically this a decontamination area or what do they call it? It's a certain little room you go into.
An airlock.
An airlock, yeah. Go into the airlock and you have to wait till the doors close before you go. It's a lot. You have to be really careful with it. But yeah, it's considered a level 4 pathogen. And a lot of people will refuse to work with it because they're like, I'm not touching that. Because, I mean, it's dangerous. Especially during this time when they had no idea what was going on with the virus, how it was transmitted, anything like that. So between 1998 and 2000, there was an outbreak of Marburg virus in Durba of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Most cases were in young men working at a gold mine there, but it did spread to the village of Watsa.
Another cave.
Yeah. What lives in caves, though?
Bats.
Yeah. I mean, among other things, but that's, I'm sure.
Right, but that could be the common thread. Is that our host?
Yeah. It was pretty devastating for them as well, because 154 were infected and 128 of them died. That's like 83% of the infected population died.
That's different.
Now, in 2004 through 2005, there was an outbreak in Angola that started in the Uige province. I looked this up. Uige province. I looked one thing up and it was like, it's pronounced Uige. I'm like, no, that's how it's spelled. That's not how it's pronounced. That's how it's spelled.
Oh, man.
But there were a total of 252 cases in this outbreak with 227 deaths. That is 90% of that infected population dying.
That's a lot.
And now we're talking about a place too where, there's going to be, less sanitary conditions and things like this, but this is a brutal, brutal illness. I noticed there were a few single cases or smaller outbreaks of Marburg after visiting caves other than Kittim. We just talked about that mine, or working in mines. So that feels pretty indicative of them coming into contact.
This is no mine. It's a tomb.
Yeah. into contact with the virus there. For instance, a 40-year-old Dutch woman who had recently traveled to Uganda was admitted to a hospital in the Netherlands in 2008. She had visited a cave in, I'm going to try to get this right.
Do you know what she paid for her hospital stay? Nothing.
She paid with her life, actually.
Well, you get what I'm saying.
She had visited a cave in Maungo. Okay.
Nailed it.
Good enough. I'm not going there anytime soon because I don't want this. So, yeah. But this was a cave in Maungo Forest.
Got it. Just say the Enchanted Forest.
Forest in Uganda.
Got it.
At the southern edge of Queen Elizabeth National Park. This is like 3 days before hospitalization.
And why would Uganda name a forest after Queen Elizabeth? Well, because England took control of it decades ago.
Yeah, that's true. Colonization.
That's so great. We shall pay tribute to our favorite queen of the empire that has enslaved us for hundreds of years.
Who is that? Do we know her? She doesn't even go here.
I love that. She doesn't even go here.
Anyway, so
then she visits on her world tour every year. Like, oh, forest lady. Okay.
So we don't know her, but 3 days before hospitalization, the first symptoms, fever, chills occurred. Then she deteriorated pretty rapidly. She died on the 10th day of illness. Yeah. In 2017, a blood sample from Queen District in eastern Uganda tested positive for Marburg, and this time there was an outbreak response within 24 hours to isolate the cases. It was isolated to 4 individuals who were part of the same family/household, and all of them were infected, and 3 of them died out of the 4. Now, this incident just shows how important a response to cases can be in terms of stopping the spread of a virus, especially when you don't know how it spreads, right? You're like, okay, we're going to lock this place down.
Yeah.
In 2022, there was a similar occurrence in a family unit living in Ashanti, Ghana. That in that case, there were 3 infected and 2 died. So that's some like little minor outbreak.
Mhm.
Now, in February 13th, 2023, the government of Equatorial Guinea, which I thought was hilarious, is shortened to Greg. Greg.
That's hysterical.
Greg. Anyway, they declared the country's first Marburg outbreak. Cases were reported in several provinces. Their government declared the outbreak over on May 15th with 16 confirmed illnesses and 12 deaths. However, one additional lab confirmed sample was never linked to a specific patient since the sample was unlabeled. Always label your samples.
Yikes.
And date them and the time. Yeah. An additional 23 probable cases, all of whom died, were also reported during this outbreak. So the World Health Organization therefore lists the date of the outbreaks ending as June 8th, 2023, which is a little later than, the country itself did. Mm-hmm. So, and what they do is they wait a good 42 days until the last patient has been discharged and there's been no new infections, deaths, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
On March 21st, 2023, Tanzania government officials declared the country's first Marburg outbreak. There were a total of 9 cases reported, 8 confirmed with 1 probable from the Kagera region in the northwest, and 6 of these died. This outbreak was declared over on May 31st, 2023. On September 27th, 2024, the Rwanda Ministry of Health announced the country's first Marburg outbreak. Most of the confirmed cases were among healthcare workers from 2 healthcare facilities in Kigali. Rwanda recorded 66 cases and 15 deaths from Marburg. The last known case tested negative was on November 8th, and the outbreak was officially declared over December 20th, 2024. Now, most recently, there was an outbreak of Marburg in Tanzania between January and March of 2025. There were 2 confirmed cases, 8 probable cases, and 104 cumulative suspected cases reported. Now, all 10 confirmed and probable cases died, including 8 who died before the confirmation of the outbreak. So 10 people died. Suspect cases are basically followed over time to check their status. They're kind of quarantined and followed, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Now, I feel like I've given you a lot of information, but haven't given simple facts as much. So just to simplify, let's hit the highlights of Marburg.
Sure.
Marburg virus is relatively new compared to such diseases like smallpox or rabies. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it is different and its own thing. So it's not related to rabies in any such way. I know we mentioned
it mimics it slightly, but
maybe in the neuro symptoms. But so they thought maybe it's related to it's not related to the rabies virus. It is its own thing. Mm-hmm. It's of a different family, even so. It is a zoonotic virus that we now believe to originate in fruit bats, specifically Rosetus aegypticus. Initially, the infection in humans results from exposure to these creatures in caves, mines, forests nearby, wherever you could be exposed. This can happen actually with inhalation of aerosolized bat excrement, which there's a lot of in caves.
Oh, that's I don't want to think about all that.
But there's a lot of that in caves.
Oh man.
Or
there's nowhere for it to go. Okay.
Or the ingestion of anything contaminated with bat droppings, urine, or saliva. Now, this can also occur if a person eats fruit that was previously being munched on by one of these fruit bats. So don't eat after bats. Mm-hmm. Also, don't eat bats.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. And we'll go over that in a second. The disease does not, like I said, show in bats, so they can live with it just fine. Obviously, as we've seen, monkeys can be an intermediate host that humans can catch the virus from via contact as well. Another source to be aware of is ingestion of infected bushmeat. This is like animals like monkeys, chimps, bats, antelopes, in this case specifically, that have been known to be carriers. Once in a human host, the virus can spread to other humans via exposure of bodily fluids of any sort, blood, urine, feces, saliva, anything you can think of that is a bodily fluid, sweat even.
Yeah, man. Okay.
So healthcare workers caring for such patients are especially at risk, obviously, because there's a lot of contact involved with caring for people. Even more so in places where access to personal protective equipment or infection control procedures are limited.
Yeah.
Those going into confirmed outbreaks these days, you'll see them wearing like those full-on hazmat-looking suits, if available.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. You're trying to avoid any sort of contamination with any sort of body fluid.
Mm-hmm.
Another common source of spread in many countries is with funerary customs. The virus can remain active within the bodily fluids for some time, even after the person has died. And there are a lot of funerary practices that are hands-on, heavy human contact, cleaning of the body, prepping of the body, those kinds of things.
I did not think about that.
Yeah. Now, those performing autopsies on Marburg victims and Ebola victims as well are also in PPE because of the possibility of it being transmitted after death, because it can still be there. Now, the average mortality rate for Marburg virus, at least as it was described when it was first shown, was 25%. But as seen with various outbreaks, this can actually range between 24 to 88%. So
88% is wild.
Like, it just depends on different factors, I suppose.
Yeah.
The virus is also not always immediately diagnosed, because at first it can look like other illnesses such as malaria, shigellosis, typhoid, meningitis, etc.
Mm-hmm. Flu-like symptoms.
A lot of time, when I was reading the Hot Zone, a lot of the times people would go in and they'd be like, "Oh, we'll give you a shot of quinine for malaria, and send you on your way." There's not really much else they could do, even in terms of examination. So
yeah, I still can't believe they flew that guy to Nairobi from where he was at. I'm shocked that he survived.
Yeah. So, blood samples should be taken for lab confirmation and treated as dangerous when being sent and analyzed in the lab. These are what they would call hot. So you need to make sure you are protected when handling these sorts of things. So, as for official signs and symptoms, I'm just going to read from the World Health Organization, because I've basically gone over a lot of it when we talked about Charles Monet. I feel like I was pretty descriptive there. In case I missed anything, I wanted to actually quote from the World Health Organization. The Marburg virus disease begins abruptly with high fever, severe headache, and severe malaise. Muscle aches and pains are a common feature. Severe watery diarrhea, abdominal pain, and cramping, nausea, and vomiting can begin on the third day. Non-itchy rashes have been reported in patients between 2 and 7 days after onset of symptoms. From day 5 of the disease, patients may develop hemorrhagic manifestations, including fresh blood in vomit and feces, and bleeding from the nose, gums, and other areas, bleeding at IV access sites as they're trying to be obtained as well. Involvement of the central nervous system can result in confusion, irritability, and aggression. And then you have orchitis, which is the inflammation of one or both testicles. This has been reported occasionally in the late stage of this disease. In fatal cases, death occurs most often between 8 and 9 days after symptom onset, usually preceded by severe blood loss and shock. So, and it can be like you've got the clots being thrown, and so like then comes the hemorrhaging. So you could be hemorrhaging in your brain, your other organs. Like, it's just a wild situation. So not fun, not a fun time at all. Treatment involves intensive supportive care, rehydration, symptom treatment as needed. There is no cure. There's no vaccine as of yet. They are in the works of trying to develop something to test. But there again, this is a newer sort of illness compared to the other illnesses we've talked about. So it's been noted as well that male survivors can actually still pass the virus via sexual contact for up to 7 weeks after recovery because of its affinity to remain within the testicles. Also, symptomatic relapse after recovery can happen. It's very rare. We don't know why it happens, but it has been reported before. Yeah, there's no cure. There's no vaccine currently. So it's in the works for testing. There's some candidates of things that are in the works for testing for such. So here's hoping that that works out.
Yeah, I hope it does. The thing sounds gnarly.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's Marburg virus. And I wanted, obviously, I did this. I was going to cover this and Ebola in the same episode, but to be honest, like we're already an hour 30 in, and Ebola is going to take a little while as well because there's different
I want you to have
kinds and different dates to go off of, and
I want you to have all the time that you really need to fully unpack Ebola.
But these are both hemorrhagic fevers. They're known as hemorrhagic fevers from the same family. They are, as you mentioned, gnarly and harsh and horrid. And I'll mention this when we talk about Ebola. These are not, of course, we didn't know it then, but they are not airborne. This is not an airborne disease. But we will talk about some scary situations with Ebola next week. So just stay tuned for that. Totally. But if it were if there were any kind of respiratory, thing with transmission to this, it could be devastating.
Sure.
So
fingers crossed.
Yeah, but that's what I have for you for Marburg virus.
Well, that's going to do it for today's episode. We're going to get into part 2 with the next one.
With Ebola. Don't go into caves.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for listening and watching, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.